This is the greatest example why you don't trade the market, why you don't listen to bears, and why long-term investors always have the edge. So Nvidia was up roughly 18% on the day. We had even AMD up 23%. Even the Qs were up 12%. On today's episode, I'm going to take a closer look at what are some of the updates that came out, my overall thoughts on these new tariffs announcements, and why I am still very bullish for the overall market. Also, I want to kind of share some of my thoughts that what I might be doing with my overall portfolio. So let's get started.
I want to thank The Motley Fool for sponsoring this video, and check out fool.com/Jose for the 10 best stocks to buy now. With that link, you get a promotional offer for the subscription service. Now, let's continue with today's episode.
So earlier today on Donald Trump's kind of social platform, he mentioned this is a great time to buy. And only a few hours after, Donald Trump also posted the following. First, he kind of talks that China is really going back and forth with this. So the Trump administration started at a 125% tariff effective immediately. At the same time, he mentioned that more than 75 countries have called the United States and whatever type of entities within them, being the Department of Commerce, the Treasury, the USTR, to negotiate solutions of subjects being discussed relative to trade barriers, tariffs, currency manipulations, and so on and so forth. And the same thing is that none of these other countries retaliated in any other way except for China, right? So he has authorized a 90-day pause and a substantially lower reciprocal tariffs during this period of 10%, also effective immediately. So overall, kind of this trade war has kind of gone from kind of a global trade war to more of kind of like just the United States versus China. And I think this was kind of what originally the market was expecting, right? I don't know. I think everybody's different, but I think the overall market at the beginning, when we kind of heard of any form of tariff discussions before all the tariffs were announced, it was mainly expected to be kind of like a U.S. versus China thing. And then we saw kind of those massive reciprocal tariffs all over the place, where it really kind of created this negative sentiment where you had even the most bullish of analysts being very bearish because this is not what they expected. It was far worse, as some people were mentioning. So I think now with this, it kind of brings back to that normality of what the market was somewhat expecting, and we did see kind of this massive rally in stocks. Now, this is a great thing, in my opinion, for long-term investors, because be honest, who would have thought that at one point today we would have kind of seen that reversal? And just from that reversal, we can see the stocks were up 16%. Imagine if you sold on when the stocks were below the 100s for Nvidia. Let's say you sold at the 90%, you already missed out a 21% gain. Imagine if you sold out on that April 7th low, you missed out on about a 29% gain. And this was also something that it seemed Trump said during one of the interviews after this announcement of policies. He will take a look at exempting some U.S. companies as time goes by. I'm using instinct in such decisions. You have to have flexibility. And again, this is what the uncertainty came with a lot of these big tech players. And I've talked about it in other places and here on my YouTube channels, that one of the things is with this current administration, you could expect big tech players to continue to say, I'm going to invest in the United States pretty heavily. And that would create maybe an incentive for the United States government to say, hey, look, your company will be exempt on these kind of tax credits, on these form of things that can help you in the long term of things, as long as you keep investing. And we kind of saw that confirmation here. So with tariffs, there's so many uncertainties, and there's so much ways for this to not be kind of like that negative story that the whole market was making it seem. So congratulations to all long-term holders. And if you haven't done it yet, make sure to check out my free newsletter, What the Chip Happened, where I try to do daily newsletters about the semiconductor industry. Most of the time it's not related to tariffs, but just what's happening within the overall space. So whatthechip.com, completely free. Now, kind of a few things. Remember, these tariffs are still paused at the moment. There could be 90 days later where we kind of maybe see some changes. So personally, I don't think there's going to be any much changes. I think at the end of the day, this is going to be mainly a US versus China thing. And by kind of now for somehow alienating, per se, some of these Chinese allies away from China and no longer having the reciprocal tariffs on them is going to put even more and more pressure on China. That's how I see it. I don't know if the administration is that smart, but that's how I see it right now. You're kind of rewarding those that didn't behave badly, and you're punishing those that did, which was one entity. And now those that behave badly would rather work with you opposed to that entity that behaved badly, right? So that is obviously great news, as a lot of these companies and especially in the semiconductor and tech industry, these are players that are able to shift around their supply chain to those other countries and kind of reduce the dependency of China. And this is something that a lot of these players have already done. Companies like Nvidia, I've talked in the past, have done way above that, right? Where they're even building more and more stuff here, maybe not in the United States, but closer to like Mexico with some of their AI servers, right? So there are certain companies that I believe, even if tariffs go back or more kind of volatility, can still do well in the long term of things. Now, what am I going to do, and what do I expect with my overall portfolio? So first, what do I expect with my overall portfolio? I believe volatility will still continue throughout these upcoming months and throughout this upcoming earnings. I mean, we are getting to earnings season, so I'm not saying this is the bottom. I'm not saying we're just going to start ripping face from here on out, but I'm still going to continue to be a net buyer. Now, I probably won't be as heavy as a net buyer as I was in the past few days unless we see those kind of downturns. And that doesn't mean that I'm going to stop buying, right? I put money to work on a weekly basis. That's still going to happen. And I'm still going to try to increase my weekly investments, right? Try to find ways to be able to save money elsewhere and increase my weekly investments, because obviously stock prices right now are way cheaper than they were a few months ago, and I'd rather put my work to go. But at the same time, I'm not trying to find like excessive cash, where some people kind of have like this secret cash pile where they're willing to take out and kind of use to buy at these bottoms. That's what I did when we saw kind of those lower prices in the stock market. Now that I'm seeing kind of a little bit more green, a little bit more bullish sentiment, I'm putting that away again, just for another super rainy day that can happen anytime soon. But still a net buyer, just not an aggressive net buyer like I've been in the past 7 days, right? Especially Monday, Thursday, and Friday. I don't think I did much purchasing Tuesday, if any, or Wednesday. But now we also did see kind of a lot of stocks rip a little bit more than others. AMD was up almost 24%, outperforming Nvidia, which was up 18%. And I want to say with AMD, we did kind of get a lot of negative press in the past 2 days. And one of the big fears with tariffs was the things like consumer goods, consumer spending lowering, and AMD, a lot of their products go into laptops, into PCs, into other kind of consumer electronics. They were ones that were really going to be impacted with kind of the tariffs news. So they were ones that took a bigger hit. Now, because of that, they took a bigger hit. So during this write-up, they rode a little bit better. And now, the great thing is I talk a lot about the semiconductor market, and we saw the NASDAQ, right? The NASDAQ was up 12%. SMH was up 17% on the day. SMHX was up 18% on the day. These are semiconductor ETFs that are very, very, very concentrated. I talk about these two, and these are the ones that I tend to run to when things go down. And I've talked about these in the past, but remember, emotions tend to run on both sides. Obviously, right now is not the time where I would say, hey, look, the bull market is entering again. I'm going to leverage. I'm going to increase everything, because volatility will continue. Be mindful of your investments, of your portfolio sizing, of how much cash you need in the near future, and make sure you do something that won't kind of destroy your portfolio when things are looking really, really good. Overall, still bullish. Now, before I end this episode, I kind of wanted to show what's the cost of waiting. So, for example, when we saw Nvidia at $95, the growth from 95 to back to 150, which would be as high, is about a 58% growth. that you see that. A growth from the current levels, which is around 115 to 150, it's only about $20, but for that, it's only about a 30% growth. If you kind of round this up to 60, and this would be about a 100% difference in gains if you just kind of try to time the market and waited for like the pause of tariffs or waited for deals, right? And to me, this is the kind of risk that you do for not having that long-term mentality. Obviously, some investors might be different. They might need money in the next few months and they rather kind of de-riskify. But if you are an investor that has that long-term mentality, this is why time is on your side and why it's horrible trying to time the market, because you can miss out on amazing gains by just waiting a day or two. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Take care, have a good day, and see you all next time.